Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and another daily editorial. Chatting now with Dave Erfle. Dave is the founder and editor of the Junior Miner Junky. Usually we chat with Dave earlier in the week, but a couple days ago we just really didn't find all that much to cover in the resource sector. As PDAC ongoing, news was generally slow and lack of M&A transactions. However, Dave reached out to us and said, hey guys, the action yesterday really spoke to him in terms of metal stocks, gold and silver stocks moving strongly higher, while the US markets were broadly flat, but broadly in this continued downtrend. So it does seem like, or at least Dave seems to think, that the metal stocks are diverging from the broad markets. Dave, take us through what stood out to you yesterday in this market environment.
Yeah, it was really interesting yesterday, right? We had the stock market continuing to go lower, breaking recent lows, and silver and the miners began to show relative strength to both gold and the stock market. Gold was basically flat yesterday after the huge move the day before, back above 2,900. But the silver and the miners really had strong moves yesterday. And also, it was the dollar also breaking down from a head and shoulders top. It went from 106 down to 104. That neckline is at 106 on the dollar, and it moved sharply down to 104. So, yeah, I mean, when you see silver and the miners start to show relative weakness after a major move, that is danger, Will Robinson. We're about to have a correction. I mean, we had 8 consecutive weeks of the gold price going straight up. But 2 weeks before the gold price peaked, we had the miners going down for 2 consecutive weeks, and that was saying, "Okay, we're about to have a correction." And sure enough, we corrected $130 in 1 week. And on the flip side of that, whenever you see the silver and the miners start to show relative strength to gold, and especially to the stock market when it's having, a decent correction after such a huge move for so long, that's basically saying, hey, we just had a really strong earnings season, robust um, cash flow, robust margins, and these miners are making gobs of money. Hey, this sector is now investable. That's what I'm taking away from yesterday's action. And we had some follow through today on the junior side, and also on the miners in the beginning of the day, and they're coming off a little bit now, but still they're holding most of yesterday's gains. So if we see more follow through with silver and the miners, especially tomorrow, we got that jobs report coming out. I mean, the layoff statistics that came out today from Doge, I mean, layoffs are up 245% in February because of Doge axing all those jobs in the federal government. So I expect that tomorrow we should have, not a very nice NFP report, and maybe gold setting up to have a really nice move after that. And maybe that's what the relative strength of the silver and the miners that started yesterday is telling us.
Yeah, Dave, it's nice to see strength in silver and the mining stocks because they do move to a different beat of the drum than the gold price does. The gold price is reacting to a lot of bigger macro events where sometimes silver and the mining stocks kind of give you the temperature. Is it cold or hot based on how they're moving? And they often, like you mentioned, front run the price action in gold and corrections in the sector or advances in the sector. Now, when you look at some of the silver stocks that were moving, we were talking off mic that one area that has your interest was some of the Mexican silver stocks, and that's because there was some positive news flow from PDAC about the permitting. There's already been positive news all year, but it seems like it's even getting more clear. Maybe let's bring that up for people not familiar with what's happening with Mexico, permitting, and what happened at PDAC.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't able to attend PDAC this year, but I saw a story from the mining forum, the Mexican mining forum at PDAC this week. So the government's developing new regulatory framework in collaboration with the Mexican mining chamber. So and it's expected to have greater clarity and more transparency for the sector by June of this year. So what you're seeing based on these positive things that are happening as far as permitting in Mexico is concerned that was related at PDAC is you're seeing some of these juniors that are expecting permits soon start to have really strong moves here this week with the silver price also. So any of these Mexican companies and these Mexican juniors that are waiting for open pit or underground permits. They're seeing nice moves this week. And I think so, because this has been such wet blanket on the Mexican silver junior sector for such a long time that these stocks have built these bases and they're ready to explode once we start to see juniors get these permits. Alamos recently got a environmental permit on an existing mine. That was a very positive permit to be issued in Mexico. So once we start to see a junior, I think, maybe the next permit to possibly get issued might be Go Gold's permit for their project. I've been a shareholder for a few years and I recommend the stock to my subscribers. And, this is a company that already has production. They already have a lot of cash. They've already issued, these robust feasibility studies for Los Ricos. They're just waiting for the permit. And that's what the stock is waiting for. That's what the market's waiting for. They've already pretty much got the cash component for the financing. So once they get the permit, they can pretty much get, set up the debt and start building the mine. And that's what the share price is telling us right now, that they're probably going to get this permit within the next month or two.
Yeah, so many silver Mexico focused companies bounced yesterday. Some of them were in at least short-term downtrends, but most in a longer-term time frame have done very well. Dave, because this story is still developing, but very much seems like the tide is turning on that negativity around Mexico and permits. Are these stocks that you would chase or that you're even recommending some of your subscribers chasing as, I guess, sentiment improves here?
Well, I haven't recommended my subscribers chase anything. I mean, I've recommended the few silver juniors that I have that are de-risking projects in Mexico on weakness over the past several months. So the weakness I've been recommending be bought on these stocks because, like I said, I expect these permits to start being issued. And at PDAC, they also said that. I mean, they basically said in response to the ongoing debates surrounding open pit mining in particular, the open pit mining is not being addressed in existing legislation, but any proposal to regulate or prohibit open pit mining is not going to move forward at this time. That's positive. So, they've already said in the past that any project that it's already been issued a concession, they'll eventually get their open pit mining permit. But if they haven't been issued that concession and they're an open pit project, their permit's probably not going to be released anytime, going to be issued anytime soon.
Dave, just kind of tying this together with what you brought up with Gold, we're working on getting them on the show soon, but I think it's interesting that they have both an open pit and an underground portion of Los Ricos, the north and the south. What do you think about companies that have done that have maybe gone under are focused on their underground side because it's easier politically and permitting wise to get that expedited, but then still have the maybe the leverage of open pit when those finally do start getting advanced? How are you looking at something like Gold in that regards?
Well, yeah, well, they've been forced to do that. Go Gold was forced to do that. I mean, Los Ricos has a much better open pit component to their project. Open pit is less costly to build. So other projects, other companies have done that too. I think Prime Mining is discussing doing the same thing. They're not as far along in the permit. I was a former shareholder and formerly recommended the stock, but when this open permit problem started to happen, since Prime Mining is an earlier stage project, the stock has been languishing even more than these other companies that are closer to being constructed. I think they're just in the PEA stage. So, but they've made announcements that they basically saying, yeah, we're going to concentrate on the underground component of this project based on what's happening politically with these permits.
Dave, any other opportunities you're seeing in Mexico, in silver, or abroad in any other metals, any other stage of stocks that you think are either outperforming or set to outperform right now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I really like Canada, right? I mean, you've got a gold price now that's over $4,000 an ounce in Canada, but more importantly, you've got a currency that continues to go down. So, that they're paying their employees in rapidly devalued, currency, but they're selling the gold in US dollars that is rapidly appreciating. So that arbitrage there has made a lot of these Canadian late stage projects more attractive. And like I said, earlier, as far as British Columbia is concerned, that they're fast tracking those 18 mining projects. And one of them is the Skeena SK Creek project, which I'm a shareholder. And I also recommend that stock to my subscribers. We've done well in that. And they also said that they're going to look for more projects to start fast tracking. And I saw a couple stories from PDAC saying that there was a panel talking about that very same thing, that, hey, with this tariff situation going on, the government's got to get on the ball and start fast tracking these projects in other districts as well, especially in Ontario and Quebec. I mean, these are mining districts. They already offer kickbacks for exploration. You get exploration dollars back. So, they need to take that one step further and start fast tracking these permitting timelines. I mean, it takes too long to permit these mines in Canada.
Yeah, Dave, let's hope that there's an expedited process for that because they sure need it, and maybe the tariffs can be the reason to go ahead and get things moving a little bit quicker. I do want to ask you, since it's the week of PDAC, and none of us are there, but we know that what comes out of this conference is sometimes deals. And so we'll be looking forward for more mining merger Mondays to be announced. But at this point we're at in the cycle where the juniors are just now starting to get a little bit more action, and some of the better companies have already run. Are we at a place, Dave, where you feel like it would be good if we saw some takeovers? Would you be happy if some of the companies you hold in your portfolio were announced next week that they were taken over? Or would you rather have it more time to run before they get taken over? Or are we in a good
Yeah, it
environment
all
for it?
depends on which ones you're talking about, right? I mean, if I've got, 2-3 times gains in a stock, and I do in a couple, it wouldn't bother me as much, even though I see a lot more room to run on their own before they get taken over, especially at the stage they're at. So I don't expect it to happen. But I would like to see more M&A in the space. I expected at least one or two more to come out of PDAC while the conference was going on, but now the conference is over. The only one we've seen recently is the one that kicked off the BMO conference of Equinox and Caliber. So I was expecting to see at least one or two more, and that hasn't happened yet. But I'm sure that they were talking mergers and acquisitions at that conference. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see a few come out of the discussions from that conference.
So bringing this full circle then, Dave, since we are seeing the US markets melting down right now, we don't know how long or how deep this correction will go. But look, yes, yesterday, the last little bit has been encouraging to see the gold stocks, the metal stocks somewhat diverge from the market. As investors in these metal stocks, do we still need to be somewhat cognizant that if this correction in the broad averages really picks up steam and it turns into a full on bear market correction, even a crash, that could also pull down these metal stocks significantly?
Yeah, well, we need to watch the volume, right? I mean, since December, the gold complex has been outperforming the stock market by a large margin with little to no fanfare. I mean, that's evidenced by the dwindling trading volume, right? So after this 3-week span of lagging gold and the stock market, with silver and the miners resuming their relative strength, right? This is signaling a recent correction in the mining sector may have been completed. But we need to see rising volume during this buying as evidence of that. And as far as the higher risk reward, precious metals developer and explorer stocks, that both of those trade primarily on the TSX Venture, they're even more undervalued than the miners, and they've basically been largely ignored since early 2021 as that volume has dwindled since then. So I want to see more volume associated with these moves. I mean, we're coming up on a 13-year major resistance in the GDX again here at 43. 3 weeks ago we got there, and the earnings season started, and even though Newmont came out and with a really strong Q4 showing robust margins and paying down debt and selling those assets and shoring up their balance sheet, they disappointed the market with their costs again for 2025 being at like 16.20 an ounce. and that torpedoed the mining sector, but this time for only a couple of weeks so far. And, it's recovered a lot quickly. The last time they disappointed the market during their Q3 last year, that torpedoed the sector at the end of the year. So this time the reaction wasn't nearly as bad because basically they're showing that, hey, we're making gobs of cash. All these other miners are making gobs of cash. The margins are increasing. The costs, they're not coming down, but they're plateauing. And now with the stock market coming off, these investors, that are building cash right now, they're seeing that the mining sector is really investable here now. They've ignored this sector for a really long time, over most of them only over a decade. And like I said, that's evidenced by that dwindling volume. So I'd like to see more volume associated with a move above 43 in the GDX. I mean, we had a 13-year cup and handle breakout in the gold price at 2000, right? And now we're looking at a 13-year possible cup and handle breakout in the miners in the GDX at $1,000 higher. So, like I said, I want to see more volume associated with this imminent breakout, which may happen here at the end of March. I mean, this is a monthly, quarterly close at the end of March. We got the debt ceiling debacle coming up again next Friday. And then we got the Fed coming out, the Fed meeting is the following week after that. And it looks like, Powell's going to have to raise their 2% inflation mandate because they're not coming anywhere near that 2% inflation target. And what the Trump administration is doing, it's just creating more inflation. So if they even hint that they're going to have to raise their mandate from 2 to 2.5%, that will be a trigger for the gold price to explode and the miners to explode.
Okay. Well, stuff for us to watch for, but hey, overall, this sector has been doing very well. It took a pause in Q4 of last year and has started off this year very strong. And it looks like just in the last couple of days, this short-term correction in GDX and the other mining ETFs also seems to have ended. So a lot of, I guess, geopolitics that are also playing into this, but also momentum, which is nice to see, gives us much more to talk about, and I sure hope a lot of people listening are also seeing gains in their portfolio. Dave, as always, great chatting with you. Everyone, click that link below to visit the Junior Miner Junky website. Have a great rest of your week, Dave.
You too, guys. Always a pleasure. Thanks.